Hello, everyone. I'm Shihoko Goto, Director of the Indo-Pacific Program here at the Wilson Center. For those of you who are joining us for an event with the Indo-Pacific Program, a very, very warm welcome to you. The Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars was chartered by the U.S. Congress in 1968, and it is a public-private entity that is nonpartisan. And the Indo-Pacific Program, which I have the privilege to lead, is committed to enhancing U.S. understanding of its interests in the world's most populous and dynamic region. There's increasing pressure, both here in the United States and across the world, to adopt greater protectionist measures to ensure continued growth. There are, of course, policies that can stimulate economic expansion and competitiveness. But one of the biggest challenges facing the US economy today is not simply about encouraging investments in strategic industries and increasing domestic production, but it is facing the very real challenge of securing the people, the talent that are critical for those key sectors to thrive. To be sure, Japanese direct investments into the United States have played a key role in advancing the US manufacturing sector, in particular since the 1980s, and it has not looked back. And in fact, Japan's commitment to further financial commitment in strategic industries across the United States has only increased, and it's seen to be contributing to a renaissance in key sectors across the country. The announcement by SoftBank CEO Masayoshi Son and its partnership with OpenAI and Oracle earlier this year is one such example. The value of US and Japanese companies, as well as their respective governments in expanding the frontiers of AI, computing, biotechnology, and furthering the application of advanced technologies for national security concerns, as well as for economic gain, are clear. But all these critical industries need people in what has become a borderless world for tech talent. The competition for technology talent has never been as intense as it is now, and the need to cultivate the next generation of innovators and those with specialized skills has never been greater. There's also a great deal of urgency to match education at all levels to the needs of the advanced technology industries. So, what does this mean for economic relations between the United States and Japan? And how can the two countries and the corporate interests between the two countries move forward? I'm delighted today to be able to introduce four speakers, all of whom are making their debut as Wilson Center panelists. And they are in alphabetical order. Bharati Belwalkar, who is the Senior Industrial and Organizational Researcher at the American Institutes for Research, AIR. Jeffrey Dressler, Partner and Head of Global Government Affairs at SoftBank. Michi Kaifu, CEO of Enotech Consulting, focused on bridging Silicon Valley with Japan. And finally, Brandon Posen, CEO of Merito Network, which connects technology and science research with industry. So let me first turn to Jeff. We've heard a great deal about SoftBank's commitment to building up the US AI infrastructure, but we haven't heard a lot about what kind of people it's looking for, how it plans to attract and retain talent moving forward. So I'm hoping you might be able to expand on that human capital side. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I'd be happy to. And thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here with Wilson and my fellow panelists. Well, look, it's one thing's clear. We're living through a technological tipping point. And it's one really where the tools that we build today will define the next generation of growth, security, and also global leadership. From AI and semiconductors to quantum computing and advanced infrastructure, the pace of change is really staggering. But it's the systems that develop our workforce and translate innovation into deployment that must evolve just as quickly. Here in the United States, obviously that means rethinking how we prepare people for the innovation economy. We need technical education that is really modular, fast, and directly aligned with the needs of industry. We need tighter integration between our universities, research institutions, and private sector innovators so that ideas don't just live in labs, but they translate into scalable, real-world, impactful endeavors. And this isn't just a domestic challenge. And so that's why the topic of today's discussion is so relevant. This is also a strategic opportunity. And the US and Japan, I think, are uniquely positioned to lead, not only because of our shared technological strengths, but also because of our mutual commitment to shaping the future responsibly. If you just take a look at semiconductors, which I know will be a topic for today, both countries bring deep technical capabilities in that space. And with coordinated investment and joint R&D, we can build more secure, advanced, and diversified supply chains. Take AI. We face a dual imperative, both to lead in performance and to lead in trust. And that requires shared frameworks for how this technology is developed and deployed responsibly. And together we can work on those standards and shape them. But I also want to highlight another area, which I'd be remiss if I didn't spend some time on, which is the critical issue of energy infrastructure. The rise of AI, hyperscale compute, and large-scale data environments is placing extraordinary pressure on our power systems. And we simply will not be able to scale to the next generation of data centers, nor enable the kind of digital infrastructure that we want to see without a step change in how we source, deploy, and manage our energy. And energy capability is really no longer just a background issue. It's a prerequisite for global tech competitiveness. And this is really where SoftBank's Stargate project, and thank you for mentioning it. I'm happy to just talk about it for a minute. This is where this becomes especially relevant. This is a massive project, and we hope that it will define the next several generations of AI advancements. But Stargate is not just a tech initiative. It's a platform for building the infrastructure of the future. And between SoftBank and our strategic partners, we aim to create the capacity to propel U.S. leadership forward in AI and advanced compute. And Stargate is exactly the kind of program that can support cross-border collaboration, R&D acceleration, and workforce upskilling between the US and Japan. It points towards a model where investments in digital systems go hand in hand with investments in human capital and energy readiness. For instance, in Japan, OpenAI and SoftBank Group announced a partnership in early February to develop and market advanced enterprise AI called Crystal Intelligence. And Crystal Intelligence will securely integrate the systems of data and individual enterprises in a way that is customized specifically for each company. SoftBank Group is going to spend $3 billion a year to deploy OpenAI solutions across its group companies, making it the first company in the world to integrate Crystal Intelligence at scale, as well as providing the rest of the enterprise ChatGPT to utilize. So I'd like to close just simply by stating there are enormous opportunities in front of us, and that's where the US and Japan collaboration and visionary projects like Stargate can lead. And happy to talk more, take questions about the type of partnerships that we're seeking and how we can drive this forward together. So thank you very much.
Great. Thanks very much for that great overview, and also for pointing out not just about the human capital aspect, but also the energy angle as well. So we really need to look at infrastructure in a very comprehensive way. And I know, and I was very remiss, we are actually taking questions from the audience. You can see it as you're looking at it. There is a chat box below. Please send in your questions and comments as well. So with that, if I may turn to Michi, you really have a front row seat in a lot of this. You are, again, your company is a bridge builder between Silicon Valley and Japan. I'm hoping you may be able to expand more broadly on some of the challenges of Japanese and US IT startups have, and in terms of getting the right talent and what companies are actually looking for in terms of that kind of human capital that drives this forward.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here. As you mentioned, I have been working mostly for Japanese large companies who want to work with Silicon Valley people. In my past, more than 20 years experience, generally speaking, Japanese companies are the learners. They want to learn from Silicon Valley, and that is the main part of my work, oftentimes. They often send employees to Silicon Valley to learn how to innovate, rather than the specific technological expertise or the knowledge. I believe one part of what's missing in Japanese companies, which are known as more conservative and not knowing how to innovate within the company, and that has been dragging down the Japanese economies for a long time. And they want to learn how to innovate. At least for the past 20 years, they have been working to learn from Silicon Valley one way or another, and all are not lost. They have finally come to realize that the innovation is good. And the Japanese government has recently opened an innovation hub, Open Innovation, Japan Innovation Center in Palo Alto to house the Japanese startups to come to Silicon Valley and learn how to innovate or to, get exposed at least to the culture here. Now, aside from the very specific expertise that Jeff just mentioned, those are all important things. But I want to focus more on the management of these people. And that is what's needed right now. Often cases, Japanese media and often Japanese companies are behind about 2 years in the to the trend, the recent trend in Silicon Valley. And that is a management problem. And the employees who work for these companies who needs to innovate often don't have enough information about the recent development in Silicon Valley. It's actually pretty amazing because there are all kinds of net media, all kinds of information all over the internet. But maybe because they don't like to read English, I don't know. Open cases, there are very much lacking a lot of information. So those have to be addressed by management people. They have to learn how to innovate themselves. They don't want to, it's not good to push people to innovate. So that's one definite thing that I want to stress. The management needs to be more exposed and needs to learn how to innovate. I also teach in university in Japan in international business, and I often stress the importance of speaking up and coming up with a hypothesis. And actually, I want to tell that to the management people rather than the young people only. They need to learn how to do the innovation building themselves. Now, again, the government and media also often focus on Steve Jobs type superhero education. But the small number of superheroes don't change the company or the country. Regular people needs to have more skills in thinking innovations and think about their careers. What are the necessary careers for the innovation world? So that has to be changed. And also, the Japanese education system is too rigid. You are hired in a company as a new graduate, and that's it. There's no way to shift to other field if you think that's necessary. I hope that there will be more flexibility, such as community college system in the United States, for example. So if in the mid-career, if you want to become an engineer in energy field, you can do that type of things. Is much needed. So those are the things that the Japan needs it, but at least the Japanese government now realize that the innovation is desperately needed to compete with newly developed countries like China and to change the stagnant situations, economic situations in Japan. So that's at least one step ahead. And also, in a bigger picture, the stronger Japan should be the benefit for the United States as well in this geopolitical situations. So I think the image of Japan has changed during the past 20 years or so. In the 80s, there was the big trade war. Japan was seen as big competitor. And back then, it was considered Japan bashing. Then it moved to Japan passing, and then Japan nothing. So that was up to 90s and 2000s. But about 10 years ago, I think the tide has changed. The U.S. people often started to see Japan as more of a reliable ally in competing against, some of our camp's competitors. So I believe that aside from the short-term changes of the current administration, long-term relationship with this common goal of enhancing innovation in Japan and the United States that doesn't change. So I hope that U.S.-Japan continue to help each other in this field. And Japan wants to graduate from just learning from the Silicon Valley and start building something innovative in their system. Thanks.
No, thank you so much for that, Mita. You covered a lot of ground there, and this focus on innovation and the Japan actually trying to learn, but the need for Japan to go beyond that and become not only an equal partner, but also perhaps specialize in certain areas that it could really embrace. And I hope that we can get back to this and talk a little bit about the Innovation Center itself, and also perhaps more broadly, which is why I believe is quite important, is about culture and the culture of risk taking as well. So, but before we can go on that tangent, I'd like to bring in Brandon Posen, who is, of course, the CEO of Merito Network. And before that, he was a former US diplomat, and his last posting was in Fukuoka, Japan. And Brandon, if you could talk a little bit about some of the progress made between the United States and Japan at the government level in investing in advanced technology workforce, and what the possibilities as well as, quite frankly, the limits are, given the nature of competition for worldwide for this very highly sought after talent in emerging technologies, including the life sciences.
Sure. Thanks so much, Shikoku. And pardon if we're like groggy. It's but 2:20 a.m. here in Japan, so I'll do my best. Ganbarimasu. Yeah. So I would say the broad contours of U.S.-Japan workforce development have been very top down. You saw at the G7 summit in 2023, both countries put together the Upwards Network, which is more of a corporate university partnerships in quantum and semiconductors. There's also been some curriculum development in semiconductors in Kyushu, close to the new TSMC, Sony Semiconductor, $8 billion fab facility. So you see some, top-down government workforce development. I think that the limits of that have been really showing clear, have been evident. And then I think my main point is that there'd be a lot more benefits if there was more bottom-up workforce development. If the governments got out of the way and kind of fertilized that bottom-up process, I think we could have a lot more gains in workforce development in both countries. I think the limits are becoming clear as AI talent's down reportedly 85% in Japan since 2019, based on citations of AI and computer science. Japan has one of the lowest VC investment intensity levels in the world, and only has 0.008% compared to 0.64% in the United States. Japan is falling behind the US and China and in patents and in AI development and other metrics too. So I think that investment is not there, and then the startup process, the bottom-up process is really not working. So even if the government wants to give a lot of subsidies at the very end, as companies become medium and large size, I think that that's not going to be as effective as just trying to get more bottom-up growth. I think you're especially seeing that in life sciences, where Japan it's really not producing as many like new drug candidates as it used to. I think the pharma industry has well researched this, that there's just a lag in drug development. So I think just to get some solutions to this, I think there could be a better like software for hardware initiative to kind of address that critical gap between hardware excellence and underperforming software capabilities, especially in AI. So I think there could be a focus on AI and robotics development platforms like NVIDIA's CUDA or AMD's ROCm or Intel's OpenVINO and so on. So it needs government capital to really connect AI startups with hardware companies, like NVIDIA's Ignition AI or the Tokyo AI Salon, really good initiatives to meld the hardware with the software. Otherwise, Japan will just be a hardware player and kind of fall behind in AI development. I think salaries are really low, and I talk to university professors every day almost, and they say they don't have enough money to hire really talent in their labs. And what they really need is to bring in, staff to the labs from abroad. They're not getting that talent, and they're kind of understaffed labs. So one way to do this is through decentralized science capital by allowing university labs to kind of raise capital through Web3 channels. Right now, that's very hard though, because Japan requires like a year-long token approval process for every new token that's issued. And tokens already become like the lifeblood of like future venture capital flows. So by creating this like very long 1 year process to create new tokens, it's going to really impede the amount of capital that can come to these university labs to create the new products and innovations in the future. So I think that's, if Japan and the United States want to look at really like workforce development, they need to look at the capital that's going to fund that workforce development, and then look at the capital, they need to look at their token policies to allow like better capital formation through Web3 tokens. And I think also just to kind of echo what Michi said about English skills. I mean, looking at the bottom up, English skills are really keep on falling in Japan. And you see that, in English First did a study of English proficiency, and I think in 2011, Japan was about 14th in the world in English proficiency. And then last time it measured, 2023, it fell to 87th. So you're seeing there's just this inability of the kind of Japan technologists to connect with their global peers, to go to conferences and learn the latest trends, to take part in online discussions in English. So I think there has to be radical change in the way Japan teaches English, so it's a lot less passive learning and more active learning. There has to be more emphasis on casual colloquial English and not just formal book English. So really big changes in the way English is taught and encouraged and measured. Maybe there could be new requirements to pass high school or pass college. There must be a certain English level, but right now the English trends are just going south, and the falling yen is not helping that, because not enough Japanese are going abroad, and less study abroad. Less and less, got a cultural level, you see a lot less Japanese making friends with foreigners, because they're so into their phones and their small group of friends that they don't connect with foreigners as much as they used to, just on an everyday cultural basis. And last point is that I talked to a head of an AI company today who's running Japan's country manager for Japan, a large global AI company. He said the universities in Japan need to become a lot more flexible in allocating teaching and resources to promising areas such as AI. Because right now the universities are on these like long 5 year plans. They're not very flexible, they're very like fixed in their curriculum and educational offerings. So if universities can become more nimble, more flexible, I think in both sides of the Pacific, then there could be better workforce development in these like very cutting edge areas like AI in both the United States and Japan. So sorry if I went on too long, but that's just initial thoughts of how bottom up workforce development could work better than the current status quo of top down.
Yeah, thank you, Brenda. And I think you've given us a lot of material to work on with, and it's also a little bit of tough love there, right?
Yeah, wanting the
As
best for
well.
both companies. Yeah.
I also want to thank you for bringing me to pivot to now Bharati, who is going to thank you for being patient. But really, I do want to bring you in because you focus a great deal on AI and the workforce. And I know that you focus largely on the US market, but we talk a great deal about the potential of AI. AI is a game changer. And it is seen both with great hope, but also with great fear and concern as well. And I'm hoping you may be able to enlighten us a little bit about what role AI can play in meeting some of the needs of the tech workforce and developing and ensuring that it has the right skill set. We are able to develop the right talent for tech development.
Thank you, Shihoko. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. And just want to confirm that everybody can see it. Awesome. Okay. So before I begin my talk, a caveat. I'm a social scientist by training and profession. So I want to introduce a framework that we typically use for any research or analysis of any topic. And I figured it would be useful to talk about it to build some context around what I am going to talk about it. So here is this framework. It's called the micro, meso, macro levels of research and analysis framework. The focus of my talk is going to be on the lower two levels of the framework. I will be covering how the current US workforce, occupations, and industries are impacted by AI, and maybe very little about the highest macro level factors, because I think the other esteemed panelists have discussed it already and very well, if I may say so. And Brandon talked about in his speech the bottom up processes. And I'm hoping this talk is going to be a segue in that direction, in a sense. And so let's go ahead. So the Pew Research Center explored how workers feel about AI use in the workplace. Workers are more worried and overwhelmed than hopeful and excited about AI, and understandably so, right? Among the current workers who recognize that this AI change is coming, over half of them think that they will have to gain new skills as a result of the impact of AI on their jobs. And also note that this proportion is much larger for employers who think that their employees have to gain new skills in the near future. It's whopping 87% of the employers who think so. And this discussion would not be complete without sharing some statistics on how generative AI is being used in the workplace. As you can see, there is some anticipation anxiety among workers, but they are still using generative AI tools like ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, Gemini, chatbots in their work, either with or without any training. So moving the level up from individual workers and employers to a slightly broader occupational and industry level data in the United States. So here is a snapshot of statistics from the Economic Index launched by Anthropic on their analysis of how AI will impact the labor market and economy over time. And as you can see, it shows how AI is actually agnostic to the industries and disciplines it's affecting, right? And more specifically, this report mentioned that AI use is more prevalent for tasks associated with mid to high wage occupations like computer programmers, and data scientists. So the big question for here is, how do we tackle this? Okay. And that is what the gist of my talk is about. So, well, the answer is using AI more. I think AI could be leveraged to identify US workforce needs, develop and implement solutions, and to monitor workforce development. AI really can be a game changer in a sense that we could solicit natural language processing, machine learning, and generative AI solutions for employment projections or forecasting employment needs. An example is a data mining and analysis research that my team at AIR conducted to identify most frequently used, consistently growing, and slowly declining skills in the accounting profession. And we used a large data set of roughly 250,000 job postings released between 2018 and 2021. Another way would be to use AI-powered talent matching platforms for matching workers to available jobs. We are currently experimenting with it using a non-generative large language model. And here the idea is to identify skills and competencies from declining jobs and matching them to the tasks performed on the growing jobs, and to find possible career pathways for underemployed or individuals who are working in declined occupations. It's a fascinating research and would love to talk more about it. AI is also being increasingly used to develop training content to train a larger pool of individuals using various different formats. Developing instructional content on a large scale and on any topic has become possible because of generative AI. AI-powered personalized learning platforms that adapt to learners' learning styles, their pace of learning, their knowledge gaps are being increasingly used in some workplaces. You must have heard terms like virtual reality or augmented reality. These are some examples of high-tech hands-on training that is being used in high-stakes occupations like aviation or medicine. My colleague at AIR has developed a proof of concept intelligent tutoring system precisely doing some of these things. So note that AI can also be used to evaluate training impact, especially with the help of large metadata collected on training programs and trainees. And all of this is to say that AI could be used for continuous monitoring of labor market to identify skill gaps and for offering relevant learning solutions. The possibilities here are endless. And I think we often talk about AI being the disruptor in the industry, in the labor market. But I contend that AI could also be a solution to those problems. And these are some of the things that are being done in the US companies. Yeah, so with this, I'm going to conclude my talk and hand things over to Shihoko.
Great. Thank you so much. That was really terrific, and I'm really glad that we ended up on an upbeat note regarding AI because it is a very polarizing topic as well. If I can turn perhaps first to Jeff. We hear a lot about American. It is not just simply the United States. It's actually the 50 states competing with themselves to attract capital. And one of the driving forces to make that decision is talent, right? The people, as well as the infrastructure and tax breaks and logistical convenience and the like. wondering, as you move forward with some of the investments that SoftBank is expected to make in the United States, to what extent is that education, workforce development, the talent pool going to be a factor in making that decision?
It's a great question, and I think it is a factor. It depends on how resource intensive from a labor standpoint some of these projects are, but it is a factor that I know companies consider when they're going to build a large infrastructure investment. I can tell you that we've had conversations with multiple states, us and our partners. There's great interest amongst the states for trying to attract investment. And then what comes along with that is upskilling. And so, occasionally in the pitch to say, hey, come to my state, they talk about the local university and forming some sort of a partnership to develop pipeline talent at the university. And I think we've seen that with chips and where some companies through the CHIPS Act have decided to put factories and establish relationships or partnerships with higher learning institutions. And so that's all necessary. That's all great. There is also a discussion about bringing in high skilled labor from overseas, which is an immigration issue. Of course, there's a lot of tech companies who have talked extensively about that and why they feel like they need that. And so, I know those conversations are all happening, but it is an opportunity for states, particularly ones that have a lot of land and know the data center space well, to bring projects there that maybe otherwise, they could not have done. And so it's exciting. If we're successful, and I think that we will be, there'll be numerous locations all throughout the country. And so there's opportunities for multiple states to, I think, benefit from this massive new investment into the US.
You're not going to pick one over the other or make that announcement here about.
I'm not going to break news here, but I will say that we've had some great progress, particularly over the past few weeks. And knock on wood, we'll have news to share sometime soon.
Great. Thank you. So location matters, right? And here in the United States, we've had a lot of excitement, as you said, Jeff, with the CHIPS Act, bringing new life to the Midwest. And so many states in that region like to talk about a Silicon heartland. So that competes directly with what Mitu is talking about with the Silicon Valley. Let me turn to Brandon. You were based in Fukuoka, and of course that's in southern Japan. The Kyushu area is where TSMC, the Taiwanese chip manufacturer, is investing heavily in Japan. What I've seen too is great excitement from the community as well, that it is about not just the fab itself, but it really is about a revitalization of community, of also building confidence in Japan as an innovation nation as well. Wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of the lessons that can be learned from that Kyushu experience to date, whether as the United States and Japan, the two countries, look to invest in one another, whether there are good practices that can be learned from this experience.
For sure, thank you. And I was lucky to host a Department of Labor delegation to Kumamoto, right at the heart of the TSMC investment in Kyushu back in 2023. So I'm glad to share a bit about this. I think the lessons learned is that it is not just about that one star flagship factory, but rather it's a lot about the suppliers around it. So in Kumamoto, there's like at least 32 different suppliers that cluster around that main TSMC JASM factory. So all the suppliers needed highways, needed water, needed electricity, needed industrial parks. And I think that Kumamoto Prefecture government did an outstanding job of mobilizing resources to accommodate all the influx of investments and families. And about 1,000 Taiwanese families relocated to Kumamoto to work at the fab and some of the suppliers. So huge, human dislocation. I think some of the lessons learned in that was that international schools were really important for all the incoming labor and their families. And Kyushu didn't seem to have enough international schools for the influx of labor, so that's one element. Two, I think technical education became really important. So to their credit, there were like technical universities that changed their curriculum somewhat in Kyushu to get to train the workforce of the next generation. And I think Jasmine worked with Kyushu University to create some more semiconductor classes and majors. So with some private sector investment, like the universities in Kyushu were able to kind of add more semiconductor classes. So that was like a really a pivotal thing that Kyushu did to get ready for this investment was to was to add human resource development to a lot of the educational lineup. I think also a challenge that we heard about was that it was tough to get Tokyo residents to come to Kyushu to get that talent. And so if U.S. states are trying to bring in coastal tech workers to their non-coastal locations, they really need to think of how to sweeten the deal and make Austin, make Arizona, make all these other states, make Wisconsin, make these places more livable for the incoming tech workers, because it's not just about the salaries, it's not about the wage, but it's about quality of life and schools and all that comes with that. So hope that was helpful.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and not to be flippant about it, but there's like an avocado toast test, right? Can you actually provide for that kind of community, that kind? So you need to do that, and I think that's a big challenge as we look not just in Japan, but also in the United States as well. And I think as Japan looks to develop the Hokkaido area with its own Rapidus initiative, that kind of building community and also becoming an attractive magnet for businesses that are only tangential, but an important fabric of the regional growth, need to invest in that as well. If I can turn to you, Michi, you spoke a great deal about the Japan learning to innovate. My question is really about some of the areas that Japan can actually be very an innovation leader. Now, when we talk about advanced technology, it runs the gamut. Are there areas that Japan has a leading edge? Are there areas that you see that Japanese companies are particularly seeing themselves as having that comparative advantage to their American counterparts?
That's a good question. Very hard question. One example, although it's a relatively small area, is robotics, for example. One of my clients is in the robotics area, and they're a component company, but they have a huge market share in the world, and their components are in almost all of the industrial robots in the world, type of things. The industry size, it's so huge here in Japan. I often go to a robotics conference in the United States, and it's small. In Japan, it's huge. It's all full of Tokyo, Expo Center. It's a huge industry. It has the power to do a lot of innovations, but I'm a little bit afraid that they might come into the innovators' dilemma situations, because some of the new areas of robotics, for example, humanoid, and AI integration. In those areas, those are still very small. And for the huge robotics companies like Fanuc and Yaskawa, they can be too small for them to spend too much effort. I mean, that's exactly the innovator's dilemma. So I hope that won't happen. And also another area that people have a lot of hope in Japan is the automotive industry. They still have a huge edge. and they have the desire to be more innovative in the autonomous driving and things like that. Again, that could be one of the examples of innovators' dilemma, just because they're so successful so far in the situations, in the current situations, and they were actually behind in EV, but EV's sales is slowing down and Tesla is in trouble. So it's almost like they are lucky not to be too much ahead in EV. So it could work as the opposite example of being innovative. I'm a little bit afraid of that situations. But anyway, in many ways, I still think that the manufacturing sector can be the good niche for Japanese companies, although that has to be integrated with software. So that's the one thing that they need to do at this moment.
No, that's really a really great point. I'm going to turn it a little bit on a more political issue. Someone's already mentioned it, but immigration and looking to outside of a country's borders for talent. Both the United States is having this immigration challenge at the moment. Japan has changed a great deal in terms of its own de facto immigration policies. But at the same time, as we look to a talent pool that is finite, that is very mobile, that is very hungry, we see countries like the UK coming up with a list of 100 universities that if you are a recent graduate from these 100 universities in the world, and that list changes every year, but if you are one of the graduates from this from one of these institutions, then you essentially get an automatic ability to work in the UK. Are those types of incentives, should they be considered as we look to attracting talent, or is it simply a corporate thing where like the salary and work conditions are enough of a magnet to be able to lure talent? And if so, what's that price, right? If anyone wants to take a stab at that. Otherwise, I'm going to start calling names. Yeah, hand it.
Sure, yeah. I think the credentialism is really losing kind of value and respect, at least in the tech world. That university degrees really don't matter as much as just raw talent and the ability to just produce and operate quickly in a good way. So I think that the university list is is less and less meaningful, especially in the tech world where you don't need a degree to code the next killer app or AI breakthrough. So maybe that wouldn't be as relevant, but I think Japan has a humongous opportunity to bring in more foreign entrepreneurs. But right now it's really cumbersome and tedious to get a startup visa, for example, as I found out the hard way. Over 40 different steps, 5 months of homelessness, not being able to rent an apartment without having a residency permit. So I think if Japan can bring in more foreign entrepreneurs, then that will really drive workforce development as well, because these foreign entrepreneurs will bring new skills, will bring creative energy, will bring lessons, knowledge to share with the Japanese counterparts that they hire on their startups. So that's a huge opportunity for Japan, at least to make it easier for foreign entrepreneurial-minded people to come and start their businesses. I think you're having, in Tokyo, some of the brightest tech minds like Ilya Kulatin or Mohammed Haddad. These are entrepreneurs who came in and actually running AI operations right now. So that could be a huge opportunity to look at, not just mid-level workers, but really trying to bring in the next movers and shakers of technology.
In my mind, the Japanese companies have to do something in their relationship with Japanese startups rather than, before attracting the foreign startups or the foreign workers in Japan. I have been advocating the large Japanese companies should acquire smaller companies or the startup companies more. There aren't enough exit opportunities for Japanese startups. That has been a major obstacles. They only can exit by IPO. That's too tough. In the United States, it never happens. You get acquired by larger companies, and it's not really happening that often in Japan. So they should do more acqui-hire and strategic acquisition of startups more often in the larger Japanese companies, I believe.
Um,
That's that's a really very interesting point. I can see Brandon agreeing 100% with with that sentiment. Yeah, Bharati.
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly add, you talked about immigration, which I'm sure is one of the solutions to address the skills gap. And I look at it in terms of, again, micro and macro solutions. Immigration is more of a macro level, external solutions. Internally, what I've seen done is I know within the United States, most workforce occupying STEM occupations and STEM degrees are foreign nationals. But what could be done is, given the push for skills-based qualifications rather than credentialing and educational qualifications, perhaps coming up with STEM skill development programs within a nation to develop this new breed of individuals who can, be workforce ready is another thing. I know some of the education folks within my organization are working towards. So I would say STEM research and STEM education, in some sense, could be one way.
And we get back to this idea of education quite a bit, right? One of the differences, for instance, between Japan and the United States in terms of the excellence that they bring to the table is Japan is often touted as a world leader in primary education, that it develops core skills and that go beyond actually the textbook reading and writing and arithmetic. It actually also builds a sense of community and values and the like. Here in the United States, American education is very much lauded in the tertiary education, universities, bachelor's and beyond. I'm wondering if there is a possibility of one learning more from the other. There's a lot of discussion about it, but there hasn't been a lot of actual implementation of that learning and specifically what that means for the STEM sector as well. I don't know if any of you have any thoughts about that, but if not, we have about 5 minutes left. And I would like to conclude this by asking you each about, as the United States and Japan move forward in furthering economic relations, and they look to a common interest in investing in the advanced technology sphere, how can they best do that? Is it going to be in this area of human capital, or is it going to be in another area? So perhaps Jeff, I can first turn to you and we'll go in the order that we started today.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's an interesting question. I mean, from my vantage point, certainly one of the strengths of SoftBank is its balance sheet and its capital that it can deploy. And so, I think we're fulfilling our commitment to the U.S.-Japan partnership by investing in the U.S. and the initiatives and the encouragement that we've received from President Trump and the new administration about a business-friendly, pro-business environment has been well received, not just by us, but by the flurry of other announcements that you've seen. And so for us, it's primarily capital. But in order for that to succeed, there has to be more than that, which is why I think today's panel is such a timely and important topic, that it's human capital, and it's how both of our countries work together, not just to make an announcement of a plant that's going to be built, but to actually strengthen our institutions and our people to enable for the next 10, 20, 30 years for both of our countries to be leaders in this field, that we need to have that. So I'm optimistic, and I look forward to some of my other panelists maybe with some interesting ideas about how to do that.
Thank you. Michi.
Yeah, certainly human capital is an important factor of the relationship. And just because in terms of the areas that I can have some influence, information flow is a very important part of that relationship. It's really amazing that people still don't know about each other. And as Brandon mentioned, the English ability in Japanese people is the problem. So that's at least something that I can have some influence in that area. So the Japanese innovators have to learn or know about the information in the United States, and the other way around. The US people wants to be more aware of what's going on in Japan as well in terms of information flow. So I want that area to be improved from now on to help each other.
Thank you. Brandon.
Sure. Really two ideas. I think both countries have unique R&D capabilities. So I think making it easier for each country to invest in the other country's very early stage startups and really early stage research projects would make innovation flourish better through both sides. For example, so if a U.S. investor wanted to invest in for example, like Hokkaido biotech startups, enabling that through Web3 would be a lot more efficient than through current, traditional finance channels. So I think capital formation at that very early stage company level could be one way to connect both countries. Second idea, I think, is by having a more interaction between really the tech giants and then up and coming startups. So I really like, for example, Jeff's company's Station AI in Nagoya is a really great way for a large company like SoftBank to interact with AI startups and up and coming software ventures. So I think having more interaction between really the established players and startups would be great, and then as well and number two, having capital formation for early stage ventures through Web3 tokens would be a great way to bridge both economies.
Thank you. Bharati, you have the final word.
So being a social scientist, my answer is going to be very biased. It is human capital. To me, it's a building block of any economy. So I think that would be something that US and Japan can work together. And perhaps my answer is going to be a bit redundant with what Nishi said. Both countries have their strengths. So I think exchanging that information with each other would take both countries a long way together.
Great. Thank you so much. And with that note of cautious optimism, I want to thank you all for being here with us today, and especially Michi and Brandon. Thank you ever so much for staying up so late to join us today. Jeff, Bharati, it's been really great to have you join us as well. I want to thank my colleagues in the Indo-Pacific program, Mary Ratliff in particular, as well as the AV team, including Keen McBride and Trayvon and Tracy Fitzgerald. I'm in the front, but they actually make this all happen. So I look forward to having you join us again. And for those of you who've been able to tune in today, thank you. And I hope we can continue this conversation on another day. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.